and welcome back. And it's 7th of Jan today, so almost a whole week of videos done. Today, not dissimilar to yesterday actually, a lot of these are further maths only questions, but either way worth having a go. And I'll start the first question in 3, 2, 1. First question. Okay, so this first question is what's known as a partial functions question. In other words, I've got different functions doing different things at different spaces. So it's one of these that you've either covered already or you haven't, and therefore you won't know what we're doing, but either way you'll get the idea once we've done it. So the way to think about this question is I have 3 parts. So I'm going to put this on top, allows me to talk about it. So we've got a straight line here between -4 and 0. Then I've got a horizontal line here, in other words, at y is 4 for all these values. And then I've got a line that's descending, negative gradient over here. So there's clearly 3 different parts with 3 different straight lines. And really the question is just what's the equation of each of these 3 bits, which is why we're doing the little gradient symbols here. And therefore, which of those bits am I using at different times? It's slightly easier just to talk about the answer in some ways. Now the word domain, and I look at the word in, so the in bits, what's the in bit that I'm using? In other words, for what x values are each of these functions applying? Like I say, it's just easy to talk about the answer in some way. So you write it this way. So f of x is this combination of functions here. Now the 3 functions I care about is 2x plus 4, so gradient of 2 and goes through 4. Y is 4 here for all of these values here, and y is 6 minus x, or minus x plus 6 here. For which values does that exist? Well, these are the domain parts, so between -4 and 0, 0 and 2, and 2 and 4. It doesn't matter which way around you put the inequality, as long as you don't have overlapping parts. But actually you should get marks for both, but it's slightly neater to sort of do one as a strict and one as a not strict. But there we go, first question, not too bad, quite hard to explain if you haven't seen it before without doing a proper video on how to do piecewise functions. But there we go with the first question. Next question. Again, 2 questions in one here, but just because it's easy to fit into 2 slides. So first question, trigonometry, solving for which values? So divide both sides, well, add 3 to both sides, start again. So add 3 to both sides, divide by 8, so sine theta equals 3/8. Now you don't have to draw a graph, but it just makes it easy to explain. So remember, sine theta is the one that starts at 0, 3/8, I mean, it doesn't look anything like there, but we'll pretend it's there. So 3/8 is here, which means there's 1, 2 answers. Also remember that sine theta is the same as sine 180 minus theta. So in other words, you get 180 minus, get the same answer. Use your calculator to get this one. So your calculator tells you 22, and then 180 minus that gives you the one which is 158. How many decimal places or sig fig to use? The answer is kind of, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but 2, 3 or 4 is the standard. 3 is probably the one that most people use, but as long as you're not being silly about it, so not 20 and not 1, and then you'll be okay. But as long as I can see your work, and you should get the marks. Okay, next question. So we have a rationalize the denominator question. Now this is one of these that we either know how to do or we don't. This is on both normal GCSE and further GCSE, so we should know how to do this. Point is, you multiply top and bottom by whatever that sign is switched around. So if that's a minus, make it a plus. If that's a plus, make it a minus. Write it out here in long form. This is just going to be a lot of working. Just take it carefully. So I'm going to do that times that, and that times that, and that times that. And in other words, I'm going to expand the double brackets, collect all the terms, cross my fingers, hope it works nicely, and I get a final answer of this here. 127 plus 27 root 5 all over 7. It's not neat and snappy, but it is indeed the correct answer. Final question. Now, if you've seen my video so far, if you're keeping up so far, you'll know that I'm really trying to push you to make sure your rigor gets better at this early stage. The biggest difference between GCSE and A-level is the rigor needs to improve. At GCSE, you get a whole load of marks for doing some pretty straightforward maths. At A-level, we check that you definitely understand it. So let's learn those techniques now. So the way I would approach this, I would say the left-hand side, LHS, is equal to this. Now what I've done is I've switched tan for sine over cos, and I'm multiplying by cos. I've said this isn't the hardest of questions, so there's not a lot going on here. You don't need to explain that cos over cos is 1. I can just say that those cancel. So that's going to give me sine theta, which is equal to the right-hand side. I've turned the left-hand side into the right-hand side. I have proven it. That is today's questions done. Well done if you're keeping up so far. Do stay with the videos. As I say, more practice is going to get you to those better marks. I can promise you that, because I've taught this for long enough to see that just practice gets you there. And as ever, like, subscribe, any comments down below, or we'll reply back to you. Thanks everyone, bye.